Hello and welcome to Positive Fandom. I'm your host, Mmmm, and of course we have today with us Russ Whitfield. How are you today, Russ?
I'm good, thanks, RM. How are you?
I am very well indeed. I had to kind of rush and get another computer set up for today,
hmm
which I have never done before in such a quick manner, but I managed to do it. I don't know how, but somehow it happened. And thank you so much for just joining the last minute because I send you the link much more time in advance, and I just didn't have it ready yet. But hey, Dennis Mason, yeah, it is a
Hey, Dan.
low tech approach.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day here in the UK. I think finally summer has arrived. I was out last night. I went to see a band called The Midnight, which is an American band from Los Angeles. And they're like they're synthwave band. And I love a bit of synthwave. And it was so weird because I thought I'd seen them recently, like the last time they came to the UK. But we got talking to a bunch of people, and everyone thought, yeah, it was kind of last year. It wasn't. It was 2019. It was literally November 2019, just before the pandemic hit. And so we hadn't been for all that time, and it was like a weird time capsule because it seemed like no time had passed at all, and we kind of lost those years, you know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're lucky to see them. I've heard so much about the Midnight. They are a great band, and they're well known internationally. And I still
hmm
play a lot of their albums from years ago, from like almost 4 or 5 years ago. So I'm a huge fan of the Midnight. You're really lucky to get those tickets, Russ.
Well, actually, my daughter got them for my birthday because
Oh,
I took Sam because she likes them, but so I took her in 2019, and for my birthday this year, she got me tickets, which was in January. So been sitting on them for a while. But yeah, no, it's great, and it's kind of like I feel like I'm a bit of an OG because I remember when all this stuff first started, and I'm so happy that even with the advent of Spotify, where artists don't get really paid a lot of money, and YouTube, where everything just gets pirated, pirated. People just as soon as something comes out, it's up on YouTube. So artists are not making money from selling their records anymore. Um, Outside of like your hardcore dedicated fans. I mean, I will buy Midnight CDs. I will buy Gunship CDs. If you're talking about synthwave or downloads now or vinyl for Sam, but it was at Brixton Academy, which is quite a prestigious venue in London. Not huge like Hammersmith Odeon or whatever, but it was a big venue. It was sold out, absolutely rammed, and I was thrilled for them. And I had a great night.
that is wonderful. So happy that you had this great gift from your daughter and you got to see the Midnight, and it was a fantastic concert.
Mhm.
Very great night for you indeed, Russ. So glad to hear that. I love concerts, and maybe one of these days I'll check out the Midnight, guys. So please do check it out. Good morning to you, Tom Jr. Jackson.
The man, the
Um,
legend. Who have we got in the shop today? There's
oh,
Mario. Hello, mate. How are you?
yeah. Hi, Mario. And of course, we have Dennis Mason here.
All right, then.
Um, and he was saying he was at the Duxford Air Show in England. Um, and I'm not quite sure what he's talking about, but glad you were there, Dennis. Glad you're here. Guys, I have my voice back. And that feels
Mhm.
good. And also, who else is here this morning?
I think I
Um,
saw Keely.
Yes, Keely Chow is here. I'm just wow, Dennis, I see you've got a lot of comments in there. So glad that you are making those comments because we love to hear from you all. I don't know whether I'll get to all of them, but good morning to you,
She
Keely
is.
Chow.
There she is.
And so good to see you as well. To you mothers out there this morning,
Yeah,
happy
happy Mother's
Mother's
Day in the
Day.
States. Yeah.
And Cool Gamer, hello, to you, Cool Gamer.
Hello, mate.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, she said it was saying hello to Cool Gamer.
Yes. And also Terrier, Tiberius Monk is here. Um, That's okay, but thanks for popping in, Terrier. We
Thanks,
always
mate.
appreciate you, stopping by and saying hello. And Renz Tolentino, how are you today? We hope you are well. Guys, remember Renz Tolentino is a wonderful artist. Please
Hmm.
check out his work, from Renz Tolentino, guys. Um, and who else is here today? Wow, you guys have been so active. And thank you, Tom Jr. Jackson. Happy Mother's Day to your mom. Happy Mother's Day, mommy.
Oh, yes, Mother's Day.
Yes. She's right over there. So, gee, Russ, I have to say, I agree with you about the weather, and there's this feeling. It feels like there's something in the air
Yeah.
that's stirring. There's some kind of magic going on, and I think it's spring possibly turning into summer. I have a feeling, that there's just something amazing going on, and a lot of people Uh, are going to the theaters. And I did want to ask you,
Hmm.
Russ, and I haven't spoken to you to ask you this question because I've been very busy with something, but um, I was just curious, did you happen to see Doctor Strange this week?
No, but I think you did, didn't you?
I sure did. And good morning, Stubble
Hey,
McShay.
Stubble.
How
Yeah,
are
I've been
you?
reading a little bit about this, and apparently it's killing it at the box office. It's like made a fortune, absolutely already. But a lot of the online YouTubers that I follow, where I get my news from, have said it's not very good, and I'd be very interested to hear what you thought of it. Um, I guess we can't really do spoilers because obviously it being the multiverse of madness, I'm sure that there were a million and one cameos that you're dying to spoil but can't. I mean, is that a fair guess? You don't have to say who's in it, but is are there a few sort of like, oh my god, look, it's such and such, and oh my god, look, it's him, cameos?
Sadly, it's not that way at all, Russ.
Oh,
There's more of a focus on um, one particular character, and that person's pursuit for something. And I think it was very interesting that they chose to do this because for me, I didn't know what to expect when I was going in there. Of course, I knew who would be starring in the film more or less,
mhm.
but I wasn't quite sure what to expect going in. And I think that the film, which was very well made, um, didn't quite meet up to my expectations for really maybe two reasons. And I can't, since this is not a spoiler, we're not doing spoilers. I don't
Mm.
want to do, I want to do a spoiler, but I'm not going to do a spoiler. But I'm not saying the film was a a bad film because I have also seen a lot of comments and heard a lot of other people say that they didn't really, that they almost completely disliked and hated the film. And I don't think that the film is in that regard, but I felt that the film was perhaps not one of the best MCU films
A
made.
question: is it fair to say that Stephen Strange is not the star of his own movie?
That is how I felt. Yes.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I've seen a lot of commentary about this. Specifically, yeah, I'm gonna say it. I mean, I think from what I've read, the female, it's essentially called Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but it's not about Doctor Strange at all. It's all about the other person's arc, the female lead's arc, and he's not relegated in his own story, but certainly he's not the key part of his own film, which I think is a bit of a trend with Marvel these days, as they some people are calling it now the MCU. I won't comment on that because I'm not a rabid Marvel person. I love all of their movies. I've really enjoyed everything they've ever done, actually. But as I've said on this show many times, I've always found Marvel films a bit like McDonald's. Like, you go, you consume it, it's brilliant at the time, and then by the time I've got out of the cinema, across the road, under the bridge at Kingston, into the car park, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Because the only thing I ever say when I'm coming out of a Marvel movie, that was pretty good, wasn't it? And the other person will go, there's normally Sam, my daughter, yeah, it was pretty good.
Well,
And then you sort of drive home and there's kind of this sort of silence after it, you know, whereas we came out of the Batman, we were fucking up until, excuse me for swearing, we were up until like 1 o'clock in the morning banging on about how good it was, you know, and comparing it to other iterations of Batman and all the rest of it.
well, I have to say that, after I saw it in the theater, the reactions in the theater were quite mixed and very quiet, and I
Hmm.
was very surprised at how quiet it was in the theater. I was waiting for because there's always someone who really likes it and
Yeah.
would, kind of boast about it and talk to his or her friends about it, and they're that's what I was waiting to see. I mean, I saw that in the Batman, I saw that in Spider-Man, but I
Hmm.
didn't see it in this film, and, after I left the film, for me, I felt like what they featured a lot in the film was more repetitive of something we've seen before, and it's not so much the focus on the individual character, it's the focus on a storyline that we've seen almost like an entire series on. So
Oh, so they've carried that on, have they, from the show?
yeah,
Because
and for me at least, I love Wanda. We all know Wanda is
mm,
going to be, or the Scarlet Witch is going to be in this film, and
mm,
I'm rooting for her. I want her to win.
mhm.
Um, so I'm one of the few people who wants the villain to get their way because I feel like that kind of makes it more interesting because a lot of these films, or at least let's say in a lot of these films, the good guys win, and I'm like sometimes the bad guys have to win too. Um,
Yes.
it can't always be where, good is gonna defeat evil easily or in that way, and I think an example of where we see stuff like that is sort of like how Lord of the Rings kind of gives you time where evil prevails for a little while, or maybe 500 years or however long it was,
Yeah.
a millennia, evil prevails and life does go on, but there are hardships and things you have to deal with, and I think that they could take a note from that approach, or at least from Tolkien's approach of, well, you know what? Things aren't always 100% hearts and flowers, and people still live their lives, but there are difficulties, and you have to deal with those consequences of other people. And I kind of would have liked to have seen something like that because I felt like the Scarlet Witch might be one of the most powerful beings in the universe.
Mhm.
And, to truly give her justice, the idea that we already know Doctor Strange has had to make difficult decisions. We've seen that. We know he said that many
Mm.
times. And if that is the case, go ahead and present a scenario where that difficult decision was made, and they
Yeah.
have to live with that. And I think that that would be mind-blowing for a lot of people. I think they would say, "Wow, I was not expecting that to happen."
Do
But
you
because she is so
Sorry.
powerful, that's what I was
Mhm.
thinking.
Do you think now, of course, because we're all experts with the benefit of hindsight, do you think it was a strategic error on Marvel's behalf? Like, I know these films are making money, but the sort of phenomena phase of Marvel seems to be over. And do you think they could and perhaps should have stopped maybe for a year or two after Endgame and just let it let it breathe for a while and then sort of come back with No Way Home and Doctor and let the anticipation build up? Yeah, because I'm in kind of two minds. I think in the one way I really think in terms of quality and stories and all the things they could have done if they'd have taken a break would have made sense artistically. But you can't argue with the figures. They're still making tons of money, but it almost seems to be within the fan community as opposed to the general audience. The reaction to Marvel movies now is a little bit meh. What do you think?
I think that, they could continue with it, and, for example, some of the things that I'm noticing is that at certain times, when they are releasing, um, uh, certain things, when they're releasing certain things, um, it's at the wrong time. For example, I almost feel like this film should have come out first, and then we could have seen WandaVision. Um,
Right.
and then in regards to something like Moon Knight, I feel like that would have made a great movie versus
Yeah, I've heard that started off very, very strong and sort of faded in the last lap of its run.
Yeah, and so in regards to them producing work and releasing it, the timing is everything. It seems like, at least for this particular IP, you know, how careful they were when they were doing Endgame, how careful the time period was,
Hmm.
and how timed out everything was, so that it made sense when fans were saying, "Well, that was 5 years ago, and they've come back, and things have changed." It was very methodical, and I'm not saying that this one isn't methodical, but I have a feeling that perhaps the focus has been strayed away from that, and there may be some sense of urgency for them to put out work because of the pandemic, because of them having to stall things. That might have thrown a big wrench because you could
Uh,
see 2 or 3 years out how they might have planned this 2 or 3 years ago.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but now with that interfering in the plans, for example, we noticed that was a huge issue with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where they had to completely change the ending or maybe even half of the series because of what happened. And I think an example like that shows that when the timing is off, when things are wrong, or even Black Widow, let's say when the timing is off or when things are wrong, things seem out of place, and they don't quite fit right, but the
right.
planning was perfect. The planning was perfect. It just couldn't execute that initial planning. So for me, I think that it's okay that they're still producing major work, meaning, Hollywood production films that are top-notch quality.
And how did you find the direction of the movie? Because I've read some conflicting reports on this. In that, yeah, let's leave that one out. Let's come to that one in a minute. Yeah, that Raimi has a very distinct style, and some of the stuff that I've read and seen, you can see it trying to get out in maybe sort of 10-15% of the movies, but a lot of the stuff that I've read seems to be saying that it feels like Raimi has been shackled by the studio, because we know that Marvel successfully locks people down, which is why Edgar Wright wouldn't do Ant-Man in the end, because he wanted to do an Edgar Wright movie and they wanted him to do a Marvel movie, and they parted ways. Was it a Raimi movie, or was it a Marvel movie with a little dash of Raimi, perhaps in the way that Thor Ragnarok, Taika Waititi, because he seems to be sort of like Teflon, and everyone does what he says, because that was a completely Taika Waititi movie. Whereas, was this a Raimi film, or was this, as I say, a Marvel movie with a hint of Raimi?
Yeah, this is a good question, and I don't think I can really answer that without seeing the film again. But what I can say is that I think they should have let Raimi go full force on this, and this could have been more, somewhat, as far as I'm concerned, more of an art film, kind of like how I saw Batman
Hmm.
recently, and it could have had that kind of artistic impact. He did nothing wrong. There's nothing. He didn't do anything wrong at all. But I think that if it was going to be, let's say, a particular sentiment or feeling, let it be that. And as I've said before, there's certain themes that perhaps they Marvel tends to stay away from, is the dark and the sad kind of thing. And this would have been a good time to go dark and sad, in my opinion, or even zombie. So I don't
Mm.
know. I don't know whether or not he was stymied or stopped from continuing on. And good morning, Kamei Egan, to you. I
Yeah,
don't
she
know.
says she's going to go see it tonight. So let
Oh,
us know next week what you reckon, Kamei. That'll be good. Hopefully, I'll get it seen by next week. I was going to ask our hey Bloodsport, the guy with the best name on the internet and one of the best movies of all time. Uh,
mhm.
Outcast was saying something about a sci-fi novel, and it kind of flashed up, and I kind of missed it.
Yeah, it's I'm doing a show with him
Ooh,
uh about, I think he says, oh yes, he's looking forward to our stream later. And he asked about your sci-fi series last time. His sci-fi series, I guess.
yeah. I
I
don't
don't
know.
I
You
don't either.
let us know, man. Like, I'm at a loss. So that'd be good if you can put some details about that in the chat. That would be wicked.
Absolutely.
Talking of
Um
wicked, you know what I saw today? And I had no clue because I've actually sort of been busy offline doing a bunch of stuff. But I did see today the trailer for Cobra Kai season 5.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh man, it's awesome. It looks so great. That it's a straight up continuation, obviously from what happened in season 4. Um, the trailer was interesting in that it was, I think, creaseless and hawkless. So we know Crease has been nicked and gone to jail. Whether he gets out or not, we don't know. But yeah, Hawk wasn't in it. It seems like this season is very going to much be a show of two halves. So you've got in the trailer, so there's no spoilers because the trailer's out there now, guys. You've got Johnny goes off to Mexico and he's got Robbie in the car with him, and then there's a clip when Robbie says, "Well, you didn't tell me. I can't believe you took me to Mexico because we're looking for Diaz." The oh god, what's his first name? I can't remember the kid's first name. Miguel, Miguel
Yeah.
Diaz. He said, I can't believe that we're going to look for that guy, and so there's going to be some conflict there. While back on the ranch, you've got Daniel and Sato dealing with Terry Silver. So I'm excited to see that. Um, Oh, Kamei says that she watched the Cobra Kai trailer on Friday. You are the gasoline, yeah, but it looks really really good. Um, I'm really excited for it. But we could be in a minority, couldn't we? With because it's a Netflix exclusive, and Netflix took a bit of a kick in the nuts, did it not?
Yeah, Netflix is having a bad, let's say, quarter. And to answer your question, Bloodsport, yes, I did want The Witch to win. Why not? Let's spice it up and make it something very interesting and cool. And yeah, I am rooting for Wanda. I want her to obliterate stuff, and I loved when she destroyed. I'm sorry, I loved when she did a bunch of stuff in there. So yes, and something in regards to Netflix, Russ, I feel terrible for these investors who went
Mm.
ahead and took their money and thought that they were going to be buying something that was going to be worth a lot due to Netflix's projections, only to find out that not only were the projections, perhaps unrealistic, with a just straight, growth all the time, but also to see that the subscriber count is down. And it's not a surprise that there are fewer subscribers because, they're not HBO. They were not able to produce work on the quality and level that HBO has been doing for 20 years with Emmy award winning shows. I don't remember if their shows have won Oscars or not, but probably have. You can still watch something from HBO that was made 20 years ago and it still has the same production quality that you would expect from a Hollywood produced film.
Yeah.
And Netflix, we're just not getting stuff like that. While they have had a few hits, that we've seen, which have been wonderful, considering their resources and their reach, and also their ability to accept new talent and new stories. We have seen them somewhat floundering.
Yeah. Um, I think Netflix have kind of fallen a little bit victim to the ESG stuff, and they seem to be pushing a lot of, as the drinker would say, the message in a lot of their content, and that's the stuff that they're putting front and center. Certainly, when I turn Netflix on, that's all I tend to see. Um, on there, and I'm wondering if that's had an effect on it, because the truth of it is actually there's a ton of great stuff on Netflix, um, but it seems to get a little bit lost in the stuff that they want you to watch as opposed to the stuff that you want to watch. And I think the Netflix interface, certainly in the UK, I don't know if it's different in America, but it's not great. So there's a bunch of stuff probably sitting on there that I would love, and I just haven't seen, you know. Um, but yeah, their Korean stuff has really, really landed well. But I think as well, there's a lot of inflation in the world now, and luxury items are kind of the first thing to go. So if you want to be on top of everything, you've got to have Netflix, you've got to have Amazon, you've got to have Disney Plus, you've got to have HBO Max, and God knows what else streaming platforms, you've got to have. And if that's a regular household, you're going to have that on top of um, I guess it's ESPN Sports with you. It's a Sky Sports here, or Sky Sports and BT Sports here. Those are two subscription services that you have to have if you like sports. So all of a sudden, you're looking, as I'm talking there, you're getting up 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 quid a month. I think Sky was something like a 125 pound a month if you wanted the whole lot of it. And I'm just beginning to wonder if the bubble, like the dot-com bubble and all other bubbles, is just starting to burst a little bit on the streaming services, and people are being more speculative with their subscriptions, like, as opposed to just keeping your Netflix going, which is what I've done, and I hardly ever watch it. It's literally, I'm tossing away 15 or 16 quid a month because I rarely watch it. But then I might well cancel it then and resubscribe for a week to watch Cobra Kai and then cancel it again. Maybe people are starting to go down that route because these things are, it's expensive.
Yeah, and it is streaming fatigue. Russ, you mentioned Shadow earlier this week,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
even mentioned the idea about this, how Netflix used to be fun. And we remember when you first got Netflix and how cool it was to be able to kind of just click on something and play it. And it was like you had your own digital library, and it doesn't feel that way anymore because there are other actors and other stakeholders in this game. They've
Mhm.
lost a huge amount of the catalogs that we remember that they had. And so that has a huge effect on it as well. And I just wanted to say, Tom Jr. Jackson has his own YouTube channel, guys. So go ahead and follow Tom Jr. Jackson on Instagram and also check out his YouTube channel. Tom, drop that link. Tom has his review of straight out of the movie theater for Doctor Strange. We certainly do want to look at that. And I saw some of the comments. Some of you guys loved Doctor Strange. I'm so glad that you loved it. The Outcast Creative says, I think Cobra Kai trailer looks awesome. And Bloodsport One says, Team Wanda, yes.
Yeah,
And when Wanda rages,
that's a good name for a band.
yeah, it really is. And also, Tom Jr. Jackson says something very interesting about how Netflix dropped the Cobra Kai trailer in the blue in the middle of the night the other day, very sneaky. And Shadow was mentioning, and a number of other people have mentioned that the marketing process for Netflix has not been like what Amazon has done. I think Amazon, even though Amazon is not perfect, when
Mhm.
you turn on any sort of Amazon show, or even when you order something from Amazon and you get that box at home, they've got pictures of their shows on the box.
Mhm.
They're promoting, they have this huge promotion where they can do that. And you can also subscribe through Amazon, through Prime, to
Mhm.
other channels as well. Like if you have a Fire Stick, an Amazon Fire Stick,
Yeah,
um, you have to go through Amazon to get those other streaming services.
like Stars and Shudders and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
So now their face is everywhere, and they're pretty much international. You order something, you go onto your Amazon account, you might see a video, but they don't even capitalize on it really. It's just their normal marketing, but it is 100% better than Netflix, because Netflix, you hardly even see Netflix anymore. Like where do we even see commercials for Netflix anymore?
No,
No.
because it's almost like it's a verb and a noun now, isn't it? Netflix. It's not just a thing anymore. It's part of the of the it's part of the lexicon. What's Bloodsport saying here? All of that speculation for nothing, for madness. Nobody's shown up in the movie except. Okay, well, no spoilers.
Talking about cameos, when he says nobody showed up and for the cameos, and
Yeah.
there were some things, those might be some weaknesses to the film Bloodsport One, and you make a good point. And even despite those weaknesses, I think those major flaws with Wanda, and yeah, just maybe not focusing on a new character that they introduced, which should have been fantastic for her. It started to feel like the movie Dark Phoenix to me. And that was
Oh.
a good feeling watching that film with this woman running around not knowing what to do with herself. That's what it started to feel like, almost to an extent. And I didn't want to relive that, but what came to mind for me. I don't know how anyone else felt about it. Um,
Yeah, I'm just oh, you support Netflix for Trek? Fair enough. I'm not really a big Trekkie, but Kamei makes a good point here. She says Netflix stock price took a major dive last week. I think unless they create better content and are honest with their stakeholders, they're gonna flop. And I think Kamei, that's probably a pretty astute uh, observation. um, or at least get their better content out there, because there has to be. I always go back to that Chris Hemsworth movie that they made, Extraction, which I thought was, it was the dog's bollocks. It was such a good film. Really enjoyed everything about. I'm kind of sad that they're making a second one. To be fair, I thought that the ending of that had the. We could talk spoilers, right, about Extraction. It is like a couple of years old now.
oh, yes.
um, like they kill him off at the end, and I just thought that was the perfect arc for this guy. That was the end of his road. He'd had enough, and he did this one last job and redeemed himself, and then he was a sacrifice of that mission. And I was a little bit upset to see that they're making a second one. But as an example of what Netflix can do, the other one that I really loved by them was the Ben Affleck one. When they go rob the bank, it's got Charlie, the rob the drug dealer, Charlie Hunnam in it, and Oscar Isaac, who's one of my favorite actors at the moment. I think he's absolutely brilliant. So they have got good stuff, Kamei. They have, but it's it's always sort of buried, with a bunch of crap that nobody seems to want to watch. There we go. Outcast Creative. Read the book. It's about 8 people across the world and what happens to them when 200 alien ships arrive and drill into Earth. No one comes out. No one can get in to get them. I'll drop the link again. Yeah, please do. Talking of alien invasions, I read a series of books a number of years ago by an alternate history author called Harry Turtledove. He did loads of this stuff, and he did this quadrilogy, and then I think he did more books afterwards, but it was certainly four to start off with. It was called the World War, and essentially it was about this alien race, and they would send probes to different planets and then go and invade the planet and take it over. So yes, it certainly does, Outcasts. They send a probe to Earth, and the probe arrives like during the Crusades, and they're watching through on their screens, and they will look at these primitives. We're literally gonna show up and wipe these people out. So they get into their spaceships and they all go into hypersleep, and they turn up. um, but of course, because of time dilation, because it takes them so long to get there, they turn up in the middle of the Second World War, and they just don't know how to cope with the humans. And the idea is, the race, as the aliens are called, are they've been around for millions of years, but they don't adapt very quickly. And it's the whole idea about how quickly humans can adapt and change and all that stuff. So I recommend those books if you want to get your hand on them. They're called World War by Harry Turtledove. John Ware Jr. says European sci-fi is also good too. Yeah, funny enough, I saw an advert on IMDb movies, whatever it's called now, which is free these days, for a film called Europa Report.
Oh, I love that film.
It's such a great film. What's the South African guy? The oh god,
I
he's
don't
in.
know.
Yeah, he's always in Neil Blomkamp movies. And I just cannot think of his name, but he's in it as the captain. Yeah, Europa Report, absolutely a top movie. Another great one, John Ware Jr., is a German sci-fi movie called. It's got out of my mind now. German one, Cargo. It's called Cargo. It came out maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, and it
Martin
could.
Freeman?
No, 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 no. Cargo. It's an all German cast, uh, and I remember because I was working for BP at the time, and as they're going up to their sort of mothership, which is a satellite, wherever it is over Earth, they actually got a BP spaceship, which I thought was quite funny because BP and Shell and all that are still supplying the gasoline to get them up into space. But what I loved about Cargo was, much like Event Horizon, Outland and things like that, the aesthetic was certainly Alien verse aesthetic. So definite recommend from me. So Outcast hasn't seen it, and Dennis has got to go because his neighbours are kicking off. Okay, well, thanks for popping in, Dennis. It's awesome to see you, man. And have a barbecue. Weather's nice.
And Bloodsport says Doctor Strange was Evil Dead with a budget meets Marvel. I love it. The book, aka
Ne-
Necromonicon. Right.
Necronomicon. Yeah.
And the dark hole remind me of something in Hellraiser Lair of the Cenobites. Hmm.
Yep. Those are great films as well. The Hellraiser movies. Well, the first three were, but I think there's about 10 of them now, isn't there, or something?
There's a lot.
Um,
I think it's Gary
Gary
Con
Tunnicliffe.
Cliff, right. I
Yeah.
haven't seen him in a while, but, yeah, he, definitely has been working on those and,
Well, the
um
weird thing about that is, there's one of them, and it's very early 2000s, starring a very, very young Henry Cavill and Catherine Winnick, and it's about a computer game, and it's the Hellraiser computer game, and it's got Lance Henriksen in it. I mean, it's like a cavalcade of sort of like stars in this movie, but the movie itself is actually really quite bad, unfortunately. But yeah, Gary's a huge fan. He made his own Hellraiser movie. He finally got the rights to it, and he took it in a completely different direction. And his Hellraiser was the best Hellraiser in years. It was really, really, really back to basics. It's available, I think, in the UK on Amazon still, and I highly, highly recommend that movie. Like, they made it for like 50 cents. You know, literally,
Wow.
it's a really, really low budget movie, and it is disgusting. It is a
Is it body horror disgusting?
body horror. They have these like they're almost like sort of Stygian witches in it, and they're fucking throwing up on people and licking it. It's really gross. It's really, really gross. Um,
You
and
said licking. I'm on board.
I think it's called Hellraiser Judgment, if memory serves me correctly. Um,
Right, right. I mean, I always thought Hellraiser reminded was kind of like a metaphor for people in the United S it may not be, but it felt like it was kind of like, Americans who are very, who are not sexually free or accept that they are sexual beings.
mhm.
And so, this man who wants to kind of have this affair, and he goes through like these kind of crazy saying, "Hey, I want to have an affair," and maybe leave the person he's with. But
Mm.
I always thought that it was like an excellent analysis of people who are sexual but don't want to admit that they're more sexual than they actually are. Um, Tom Jr. Jackson says, "Follow me on YouTube, guys. Follow Tom Jr. Jackson on his YouTube channel. Here is the link in the chat." And the Outcast Creative says, "Extraction was great. Netflix should take more risks up on and coming filmmakers and writers." And you know something, Russ, I'm really surprised with everybody who's been trying to pitch to Netflix that this hasn't been the case.
Yeah, Netflix make it incredibly difficult for you to, you certainly can't be unsolicited and pitch to Netflix. Um, it's tough, and they don't offer you a great deal either. I think I mentioned here a couple of weeks ago. I know someone that their novel series has been picked up by Netflix, and the guy basically said, it was almost like I was bent over the table by Netflix and given a good seeing to. But yeah, that's a Harry Turtledove one, I think, Guns of the South. But yeah, they don't offer a great deal. Yeah, so I saw this one pop up, Kamei. Yeah, instead of dumping entire seasons of new content on Netflix, they need to go back to weekly to get people to talk about it, so the buzz is there and they might get more subscribers. Yeah, they're going to have to do something because their current model, maybe they're not going to hit the panic button because they've had a bad quarter. But if this is anything to go by, then people have only got so much money, and there are so many streaming services now. And if Netflix isn't giving you what you want, you're just going to take your money elsewhere, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And the way that Netflix is, I mean, I don't even know how many productions they've actually made, let's say, over the past, let's say, 7 years when they've
Mm,
pretty much been dominating the streaming and everybody tried to replicate that model, which
mm,
they thought Netflix was going to go under when streaming came through, but they didn't. They went from physical media to streaming.
mm.
And but their model, and someone has pointed out, never included having to do their own work producing stuff. And so that might have been something that perhaps Netflix could have merged into Amazon or into another company. And
Yeah,
then, although they would have lost the name, their network and employees and everything could have survived that. John Ware Jr. says Osmosis and The One are Euro sci-fi series about romantic matching. I highly recommend both. Well, thank you, John Ware Jr. I'm going to have to check those out. Are you familiar with those, Russ?
no, no, I'm not. But I was going to say just to go back to what we were saying about Hellraiser a minute ago. You were talking about the sexual aspects of Hellraiser. Also, when Hellraiser came out, it was in I think Bloodsport. I think it's on Amazon. It's not free. I think you have to rent it or buy it. But honestly, if you like Hellraiser, because Tunnicliffe, his whole life has been about Hellraiser. He's worked on every single movie, and he finally got the chance to make one, and they gave him $150,000 to which to make the film. And he said, "No, I can do it. I can do it for that much money," because he obviously did all the makeup. And Midnight's Edge actually did a huge in-depth series with Gary Tunnicliffe about this, and he speaks a lot about Doug Bradley and his relationship with Doug Bradley and why Bradley isn't in this latest one. So if you are a Hellraiser fan, definitely check out Tunnicliffe's stuff on Midnight's Edge. They do a whole series on it. But yeah, yes, I never really thought about the sort of repression aspect of it from, like a United States point of view, and having the American guy and the British woman in it. Um, but back in the day, back in the 1980s, we seem to have, or people pretend that it wasn't like what it really was, and certainly was not as liberal as it is now. So there were, obviously, Clive Barker is homosexual, and came out sort of pretty early with that, but that stuff was still fairly shocking back in the day. I remember when the Relax video by Frankie Goes to Hollywood came out, and it was banned, and all that sort of thing,
Yes.
and this whole sort of sadomasochistic, uh, like in Cruising, that sort of leather homosexual scene. That, I think, that's also what Clive Barker was kind of getting at there. This sort of kinky stuff with the Cenobites, right?
Mhm. Hi,
And
Roger.
High
Sorry.
Rogue, and I think that was a big part of it. And when people look back at the 80s now, they think, they go, "Oh, I knew." Everybody knew that George Michael was gay, and everybody knew that Elton John was gay.
No.
And we really didn't. It was like such a shock when we found out. It was, "Oh my God, really? I had no idea." Of course,
The
when
only
you look
one
at,
we knew for sure was God, what is his name? The guy from Boy George. That
oh,
was the
Boy
only one
George,
we knew for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Well,
Mike.
but then again, with Boy George, for the longest time, nobody knew if he was a boy or a girl. That's true. Like, you look back on it now, it's obviously he's a bloke, but back in the day, no, it was a bit of a secret for a while. And even in the greatest movie of all time, Commando, they make a comment on this when Arnold Schwarzenegger says to Alyssa, 12-year-old or 13-year-old Alyssa Milano, "I don't know why they just don't call him Girl George. It would get rid of all of this confusion." So it was a thing. It was a thing. Yeah, Mario brings up Black Crab by Numi Rapace. And I think we spoke about this because I was talking
We
to my mate about
did.
it. It literally was like a traveller game from the 1980s. It's almost like we were sat around a table. I felt like I was sat around the table playing it as I was watching that movie. But yeah, but to sort of expand a little bit on the Hellraiser theme, I was having a conversation, and I actually, we haven't prepared for this chat, by the way. This is something that I was talking about to a director that I know,
Oh.
um, and we were talking about sex in movies and things like that.
Mhm.
And he's got a hankering to make an erotic thriller,
Ooh.
right? And I said, well, there's no point anymore, is there? You know, there's no market for that because you can literally just go onto the internet now and just type in what, what there's a cat, what is it, Rule 46 or something like that. You know, if there's, if you can think of it, there's porn of it. You know, there's a category for everything, everything these days. But Greg was of the mindset there is a market for it, but it's not the market that you'd think. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. What do you reckon? And he said, he's obviously a chap, so we don't know that we were shooting the shit about this. He thinks, and this is what I wanted to put to you, or he thinks that there's a female market for erotic thrillers as opposed to pornography, which many men indulge in, but not so many women do. But like you go to the bookshop and there's always like the black glaze section at the back end of Waterstones or is it Barnes and Noble? Or have they gone? Anyway, you have those, and there's like hundreds of these books, and like who's buying them? Nobody knows, but they keep printing them and printing them and printing them. So there's obviously a market out there. So I was intrigued um, to get your thoughts
Mhm.
on the erotic thriller, because I remember in the 90s, before the internet was really a thing. Um, there were two things. You could buy pornographic videos. Of course, I wouldn't do that because I'm far too innocent.
Adult
Um,
films,
yeah,
right?
adult videos, right?
Mm.
Or that was a mission though, because you had to go to like a specialist shop to get them, and you'd have to do the sort of walk of shame and go, walk into the shop and walk out with your brown paper bag full of videos. Um, but if you went to Blockbusters or whatever, the get out clause was the erotic thriller, right? So I'm not talking your basic instincts and your showgirls level erotic thrillers, but there were millions of these films out there that were essentially soft core wrapped around a thriller. It was a thriller plot, but nobody was watching it for that. And I used to quite quite like them back in the day. And do you think that there's a market out there, RM? Um, do you think the erotic thriller could make a comeback? I mean, it kind of did with 50 Shades of Grey, and that kind of made a fortune and went, and but it was never followed up. There wasn't like a rash of stuff hitting Netflix and Amazon and all that kind of stuff that was similar. Commando is the greatest movie of all time. Rogue Thinker, yes, it is, and Conan the Barbarian is awesome. But yeah, I'm a huge Commando fan. I've actually met Vernon Wells. He's a very nice man. But
Yes.
yes, the erotic thriller.
So my answer to that is yes, I absolutely think that there is a market for this, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
There's a number of things that I've been noticing in entertainment, and ironically, Netflix has a part of this, as well as Amazon, and that is the female gaze has highly been ignored for so long.
Hmm.
But not just the female gaze, for people who like men. Anyone who likes men, that includes women and anyone else who likes to see men. I
Hmm.
think it has been, there's been this vilification of men. And, when you do this, when you kind of push away, more than half of the world's or half of the world's population saying that, we don't want to hear what you have to say, you're not important, it's essentially a form of, prejudice against men, but it also means that we don't get a lot of the entertainment that we enjoy. And people are kind of, censured for no reason. And, for example, Hallmark, 100,000 Hallmark movies can't be wrong. There's a reason why, women and people who like Hallmark movies are watching these stories, and they've kind of branched out from the romance to, sort of like mystery, ones, and somewhat not exactly erotic thrillers, but they're trying to go in that direction in sort of, a Disney level of it. But we're also seeing situations where Netflix and Amazon are definitely appealing to, I'm calling it the female gaze, but it could be other men who are looking as well, which is fine. But I'm just going to call it the female gaze for now. With series like Reacher, that was sexually charged. That was an
Mm,
incredibly sexually charged show. I mean,
yeah.
this guy was oozing sex practically in every scene, taking his shirt off, showing his body, just his bravado, smacking people around. This stuff was absolutely intense, electrifying, exciting, and, I've watched it so many times, I've lost count, Russ.
Mhm,
Um, and then we had series like Bridgerton, which certainly was it is a fantasy story set
mhm,
in a certain time period. It's a costume drama. It is not 100% historical. It's a fantasy made
mhm.
for people who like this sort of romance. It's not historically accurate for a reason. It's solely for your own sexual desires and pleasures. Thank you so much, creators of Bridgerton, for bringing us that lovely, just absolutely deliciously tasteful Bridgerton season one, which was smoking hot, and season two, which was also hot. Yes, I do think that there is definitely somewhere to go with this. I think that a lot of people are afraid to do this. And honestly, men haven't really been exposed. I mean, especially in the United States where male nudity is kind of, not necessarily something that's done, but I've seen Chris Pine in a few films this past a few
Uh,
weeks, and
or Chris Fine, as my girlfriend every time I say it, she goes, "I think you mean Chris Fine."
well, I saw him in a few films, and I saw him in one film called The Outlaw King, which I
Mhm,
mentioned to you, Russ, before,
yeah,
but I was not expecting to see Chris Pine this way, but it was the way that they did it,
mhm,
Russ. You see, of course, we're always, for those of us who have the female gaze, we're looking to see these characters, and it doesn't really matter what the man looks like. There has to be some kind of appeal to the character. So what we're saying is you don't have to be an Adonis. You just have to have that sex appeal that we want to see, that we desire to see.
oh,
So
so
that's very important to note, that if the person has that appeal on screen,
mhm,
then we want to see them do different things, and we're going to embrace the masculinity in it. I think that it has to have a certain masculine factor. I'm not saying that it can't be lesbian thriller as well, but I can tell you that these particular shows that I've mentioned have just been so successful and have, drawn a lot of eyes and viewership,
mhm.
that if you really can't ignore it. And I've always said there's somebody who's going to take some of these Hallmark films and do something with them, and it's just gonna, Hallmark is around for a reason. That's another
Well,
thing I want to say. You can watch
I
it when your kids are in the room, but we all know what's going through our minds when we watch these Hallmark films. You suddenly run into the person of your dreams.
Yeah,
It's an
I saw
uncomfortable.
you and Lorenia reacting to Jason Momoa in a Hallmark, movie, a very young, Jason Momoa. That was quite an interesting show. I didn't know if you 2 were gonna hold it together, actually.
Well, I think that that is also another example of us wanting to see, in some particular situations, men be masculine. And, we think it's important that, what these characteristics that we love in men we continue to see these. And for men not to be vilified for that, something that is just inherently, of that gender. We don't think it's
Mm,
bad. We think it's great. And, I think that we're going to continue to see more series like that. And I think that even there was a series with the guy from The Office. I can't remember his name. He was ironically in the film that I saw the other
Steve
day.
Carell?
No, but one of the guys, not him, but another character in the story, he played it wasn't Jack Reacher. It was
Oh, Krasinski, John Krasinski.
yes.
Yeah,
And
he was the Ryan, Jack Ryan.
even in that series, there was sex in both seasons and
Mm,
nude. I mean, he wasn't nude. It would have been great to have seen him nude. Um, so sorry about that. But I think that what was really interesting is that they did show you his body. They showed you that he had scars, and like I want to see that. I want to see him, the broken character, and how he's, the scene where he fights for his life on the table with a grenade in his hand. I'm like, I want to see more of that. Yes,
mm.
please. So I think that it arouses people who watch it, and then when he does have the love interest in the story, it's incredibly satisfying, and there's a reason for that. So a thriller with him, with him playing something like that, even if it's not that character, I would watch that. I would totally watch that.
You see, I
So
think you've hit on something here because this is we were talking about writing a story for it and all that sort of thing because he knows this company that make these kind of movies, and I was like, yeah, I can have a go at that. But
Hi, retro nerd girl. Thank you.
hey, Retro No Go. I don't know what we're preaching about, but
About the female gaze, the
about the female
female.
gaze, I guess. Yeah. Um, in the 90s, when these films were coming out, and it very much was a 90s thing. I don't think it actually eked over to the 2000s. I'm pretty sure it was just in the 90s that they had this whole glut of movies. And the guy always was one of two. He was either a cop or private eye, or he worked in design. He was always a designer. I don't know why, but the guy was always a designer. But they were always about the woman and female sexual situations and all that sort of thing. So what you're saying is, if you want to do it in 2023, you're going to have to flip sort of the script of the erotic thriller and make it a male lead and make the guy the one going into the situations.
Yes, yes,
Right,
yes,
right, right. Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't
Hmm.
know. I'll have to have a think. I'm writing an Indian karate movie at the moment, or trying to anyway, and not doing a very good job of it, I have to say. So, what are you saying here, Outcasts? I am amazed that Reacher got made in the current social climate, but so glad that it did. Also appreciated my personal Jason Momoa photos. We can talk about him tonight. Yeah, I can't tune in tonight, unfortunately. I'm taking my daughter out for dinner, but I will. As they say in it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger theme show. I'll catch it in a rerun, as they said in the Running Man. Go ahead, RM.
Yes, Retro Nerd Girl says the female gaze has been underestimated for years, but it is not so far off from what the mainstream can enjoy. And I think that men can enjoy it too, because we're not asking for, I think that men do like to see other men powerful and strong. And, Reacher is almost like a guilty pleasure.
Mm,
But when you read the books, it's not a guilty pleasure. I mean, I think that, the visualization of what they did not have to make him so sexually appealing, but the director and whoever did the casting chose to do this. And Alan Richardson is an incredible person, but I think
specimen.
yes, I think it's very interesting that they had specific scenes in the story where you had no choice but to look at his physique. You almost had to look at his physique in addition to understand how clever and intelligent and skilled this character is, because after all, he was I can't remember all the details, but he's military trained
Yeah, he's a
style.
military policeman, isn't he?
Yes, and an investigator, so he's not sort of like just an ordinary person. He's someone who's had that experience and, knows how to handle an investigation in a difficult situation, which he was put in the story. So, and I did also want to mention the thing with nudity, Russ, is that although there was some nudity, we did not see Alan Richardson completely nude. But we have seen, or at least I've been seeing a trend towards seeing more male actors completely nude. And
Mm.
I was surprised to see Chris Pine, because what they did, Russ, is that
Surprised and overjoyed, I'm sure.
well, they teased the like it was a tease, because it was like very slowly lowering the camera. And I'm like,
Uh,
oh, they're gonna cut it off when it gets to his waist, and they didn't. And so you saw a little bit more. You actually saw it. So I'm gonna say it, I don't care. You saw his pubic hair, right? So I
mhm.
was like, oh my gosh, like I just knew that this was real. Like it was not, this wasn't edited in or anything. And then they show you, so then they stop. Like he was, with his spouse in that scene. I'm like, okay, that's appropriate. He's gonna be
Mhm,
nude while he's with his spouse. This isn't inappropriate. But then there was a bathing scene where he's like in some random lake somewhere.
mhm.
And Chris Pine is walking out of the lake, and then you once again, like he's walking out of the lake, out of the water, and it goes lower. You see his pubic hair, and the next thing you know, you see everything.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, so it kind of like drew my attention. Now, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be that way in every single film, but my point is that we can't deny that we like to see, especially, a woman like me who likes men, likes to see men. So,
Mhm.
they can draw on that a lot, and I think that it could be very successful um for a lot of a
It's
lot of people.
it's a difficult one though, isn't it? It's kind of like, in a sort of post, Me Too era, it's how do you write something like this that's not gonna come across as perhaps exploitative or something like that, because essentially you're going out to make a raunchy film. And I was saying to Greg, my mate, really what you'd have to do is you'd have to get a really strong female crew, female producers, uh, potentially female writer to write this sort of thing to make the story sort of bulletproof, because I think it could be misrepresented if a bunch of blokes sort of put this idea forward. I don't know. It was just we were just shooting the shit, really. But um, yeah, I quite like the. I just remember those films, and I do have a big fondness for them. They were so cheesy, but so awesome at the same time. And the Outcast creative says, absolutely, I love being gazed at by females. It's happened mostly when my grandma came round, God rest her soul. Yeah, it's the daily struggle, man. I can't hardly leave the house myself. I mean, look at this face. What can I tell you?
Well, we are
Uh,
looking, so, don't think that we are not looking. We certainly are looking, and that's something that should be considered, at all times because we just are, and we hope you're looking at us too, but, we are looking, but we try to be very subtle, about it. So, I think, Dennis Mason makes a really good point here. We could start off with this guy, Johnny Depp. Um,
yeah, because
and
he'll take work now, won't he?
well,
I mean,
I'm sorry, Russ. You remember the film he made? Was it called The Ninth Gate? Is it called The
yeah,
Ninth
oh,
Gate?
that was an awesome movie. I loved that film. Oh my God, I loved that film. I again got it on video from Blockbusters many years ago, and didn't really, whatever. What is this? It kind of looked interesting, and my wife at the time, obviously liked Johnny Depp, and I thought, well, it's a bit of a satanic thriller. I'll put, and I really liked it, and I really liked the ending as well.
Yeah, and I think that his sex appeal was played up in that. He didn't do anything. I think he might have had sex with the woman in the film, and I think that she is also the mother of two of her children.
Hmm.
Two of his children, excuse me. But my point being that he was smoldering in that, and there was this kind of forbidden. Yes, it was about the devil, and I admit that. But let's say if it wasn't about the devil, it was more of a romance. It would be so incredible to see what he could do. He is so appealing, very, very appealing. I don't care what happens in the trial. We still want to see Johnny Depp. He certainly is someone who I think has a lot of charisma, a lot of sexual energy.
Hmm.
He made these advertisements for, I think it was for a cologne, and he's just standing there, like he's not even doing anything.
Yeah, and you're all in. You're going to buy the cologne. Fuck it.
Yes.
I know it's for guys, but I'm going to buy it anyway because Johnny's hot. Yeah.
And so I think that tells you alone that we find him attractive and like the character. I mean, well, the woman who he's in this court, she found him attractive. I mean, this is, and she's incredibly beautiful. So
Oh my
that
God.
goes to show
Oh.
you that so I think that it's something to think about. And I think that does it mean that the United States is becoming more of a sexual nation? No, it doesn't, because they still don't want certain things to be shown. But I think that there may be a certain demographic now of women who want to see that, and it could be a very successful endeavor to do. And
Yeah, I was thinking when we were talking about it, who would you get and how would you do it? And I was very much of the mindset that obviously it's not going to be a four quadrant movie, but yeah, I was more of the mindset that you really want to be pitching this at the 35, 40s and upwards. I don't, in my mind, I was not thinking of this as younger people in their sort of 20s, because I don't know if there's a market for that, but people who harken back to who are old enough to remember those days, and you start giving them that again, but with a different spin on it, that it's now it's kind of a guy led thing. Someone in the chat was saying, yeah, you could do like a guy home wrecker thing. There's all sorts of ideas, but I kind of figured if the people that were involved in the story were more mature, like over 40, or at least approaching 40, that sort of thing, perhaps that might land better. But I just don't know. It was just something we were talking about.
Well, I think that, you're right, but I think that we're also seeing, ages kind of intermingling now, and
Hmm.
so older women are gonna wanna see older women having, affairs with younger men.
Right.
We wanna see that, so, just look at how many, movies are made that have that theme, in them, so, you can't ignore that because we wanna see stuff like that. Dennis Mason says women have changed dramatically in the last 3 years. Maybe we have. Rogue Thinker says, excuse me, says the Ninth Gate is my favorite Depp film. Yes, and Mario Lopez points out it was filmed in Sintra, Portugal, and
Mm.
also, guys, check
Oh,
out.
the Night Gate, yeah.
I'm sorry, Russ.
Yeah, the Ninth Gate. Sorry, I was thinking what was filmed there. Of course, the Ninth Gate was filmed there. Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and thank you, Mario, for letting us know. And guys, follow Retro Nerd Girl on YouTube, guys. Check out her channel. Certainly do pop in for that. The link is in the chat. And I think that, Russ, for a lot of times there would be formulas about what to put into these films.
Hmm.
I can't remember the last, let's say, Skinamax film I've seen. I don't even know they make them anymore, or Red Shoe Diaries, or any of that stuff.
Yeah,
Justin Robert, I
probably
think,
not.
did a
Probably
series.
not.
We don't see that anymore, but I think that people may want to see, scenes of a sexual nature and adult films with women, probably 40 and over.
I
It's
have to
very
say,
appealing to them, and, I think men would watch it. Would you watch it, Russ?
yeah, well, I think I would, because I would be harkening back to those days, and I must say, John Ware has got a lot to say on this subject. I see he's been commenting a lot about Skinny or whatever we're going to call it. Europe can be an easier place for both men and women to produce the right thrillers, maybe even in Japan with their population issues. Yeah, I mean, um, I w- I was in Japan, and they do a very odd thing with their adult movies, and it's not big. I was flicking through the channels looking for naughty movies in Japan. It was just as I was flicking through that it was on the channel. They only had two. They had
Okay,
three.
Russ.
Okay, now why would I lie? They had three things on the telly that I could watch. One was a drama documentary about the Second World War with Hitler, Stalin, and Japanese, and they played that on repeat. Then on the
Right.
other channel, it was Von Ryan's Express, that old movie, and then there was like the Rude channel, and they sort of pixelate everything out, or certainly they did back then. I don't know what they do now, so I couldn't tell you about Japan, but certainly, yeah, in Europe, it's much less sort of stigmatized, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
so so yeah, it's an idea, but I've got to finish this Indian thing first of all, and I'm not doing a great job of it at all. I'm really floundering with it, to be honest with you. But yeah, what else we got in the chat? So let's try and catch up with this because I can see it's been going mental today.
The Outcast creator says he's gotta run, but he'll catch me later. I will see you later,
See you later, mate.
for sure. And, Rogue Thinker says, "Never ignore the cougar demographic of the audience."
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
think I think you're right. I mean, this is what our room was saying. There's definitely people out there that will watch this. Shannon Tweed. My favorite was another Shannon, actually, John, where I used to like Shannon Worry. And I was going through my DVDs the other day, and this is what kind of sparked this conversation with my mate Greg. I've actually got Mirror Images 1 and 2 and Animal Instincts 1 and 2 on DVD still.
I love it,
I'll
I
have to give
love
them a
it.
watch.
Those are classics. Shannon Tweed ended up marrying Gene Simmons, if I remember correctly,
Yes.
and I believe they're still together. Tom Jr. Jackson recommends checking out Swak Props. Guys, these guys make actual replicas from the movies, for example, the books in The Ninth Gate. I don't know how he does it. I have no idea. This guy is incredible. But since we did mention the Ninth Gate, go ahead and check out Swag Props. They have a store. You can buy the book from the Ninth Gate. And he actually found an error, which I find mystifying. He found an error in the book, that the production company had made.
Hmm.
And that's how careful and meticulous Swag Props is. So I think that is very interesting indeed.
That's a
Um,
great shout out, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Russ, you made so many good points about looking at where Hollywood is going and what people want to see in regards to movies. And I think that we haven't had that one movie yet, other than Spider-Man, that has perhaps you know checked off all the boxes for everybody. And there really was no sex in that film. Like, it was romance, because
Mhm.
Spider-Man is a romantic character. He's always looking for love. He always wants to be with someone. This is not a man who wants to be alone. He wants to experience the joys of a relationship. And I always like that about Spider-Man. I said, if I had to choose, I'll go with the romantic, because he always wants to have special moments, like giving CJ, or it's MJ,
MJ.
something on top of the Eiffel Tower. Like, I'm like, this guy is great. Like, this person really wants to show how much he cares, and that might also be another way to go, Russ. If we're stepping away from eroticism, so to speak, and going for the romance, that might be another alternative. And of course, the romance might appeal to a broader um audience, as it did and as it does in Spider-Man.
Well, that was a thing. Yes, romance. I remember talking again of the 90s, pre-Sharp. Sean Bean burst onto the scene in a show here based on D.H. Lawrence's Lady Chatterley's Lover, and he was the bit of rough, like, and that was Sean Bean back in the day when he was
Hmm.
young and very very Sean Bean, and yeah, that was obviously had loads of sex in it, but it was also a romance story, and it was huge over here. I remember it, from back in the day. But he was awesome as Sharp as well. I love that.
I loved him in that, and of course, I saw him in 15 Streets. I think that's what it's
Hmm.
called.
Hmm.
With where he played. I think it was. I can't remember where it is British, but that was a show that was on as well. And I can't remember who the co-stars were for that one, but that was a big one that I saw him in. It was also kind of very romantic, because
Hmm.
he was he played a bit of a bad guy, and women kind of like to sometimes see a bad guy in some stories. But yes, in Sharp's rifles, and I know it was more than just rifles, like there's infantry in Sharp's, the where
Eagle and all
are
sorts.
he just shined in that. I have watched that so many times, and of course, like, it is a fantasy, and who doesn't love to see, or at least for so many women who love to see his life on the road, and those lonely nights out there fighting in the war. It's very romantic to a lot of women, or people who like men, who like to see these things. So that's another option as well, Russ. The main character having to be in a situation perhaps that he doesn't, excuse me, want to be in, but it's not going to stop him from, kind of making connections and having that intimacy. So
Hmm.
the intimate part is, just is so incredibly important in these stories. And Chips Bewick,
Hey,
hello.
Chips, how are you, man?
We hope you are well, guys. This is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day out there to all the mothers again. And thanks for joining us. We've been talking about some very interesting topics today. Um, for sure, Russ. And I'm kind of glad that you did mention those things, because perhaps there is a trend now towards trying to figure out this new direction. People always want to know what's the new direction of the MCU, what's the new direction of Hollywood. We already know that some of these streaming services are going to have to change the direction for them. Not everybody is like Amazon, where there's a billionaire who owns the company, and is just kind of like, just he's just making money by breathing. So not every streaming service is in that situation. But I do think it's interesting to look at that. And I don't know whether these streaming services will ever fully disclose the information about how well their businesses are doing.
Not unless they're made to. No, I cannot imagine a world where they would want to release this stuff, because with the ESG policies that they've all completely brought into, what you don't want to reveal to your socially conscious investors that are continuing to fund these projects, uh, I'm just not convinced that they're successful. Um, and I don't want to dwell too much on the message or anything like that. But when you're constantly producing shows that have a political agenda or social justice agenda, they just don't seem to be landing. And as much as Amazon and Netflix and Disney and all these people want to tell you that these are the greatest things ever, they never last more than a season, do they? I remember the one, The Watchmen, and they took The Watchmen and they made it about something else, and then they did Lovecraft Country, and they made it about something else, and uh, got their messaging in there, and the diversity message and this message and that message and all the rest of it. And these shows, just nobody's watching them. Nobody wants to watch that stuff. And I'm not just talking about people that look like me of my side. I'm talking about the general audience just aren't interested. We want good stories. We don't want to be told off when we turn on Netflix. And to go back to what Kamei was talking about earlier on, that she's right. They need to look at their strategy, start bringing out their shows once a week, stop wagging their fingers at people and telling us how terrible we are and all the rest of it. Just tell us a good story, and everybody will get behind it because you know cream rises to the top, right? It's like an Irish coffee.
It really does. And, perhaps this is from what we're seeing for with some organizations that they are shaking up things. They're stopping productions in mid-production. And that usually was something that would happen when somebody did something very bad, Russ. Um,
Yeah.
all of a sudden everything was pulled, everybody was fired, things are over. It certainly was at a time, if that happened, people would go home crying. It would be very serious. People have done things very badly, but
Oh,
now we're seeing it happen across the board with different organizations and things stopping. And however, the concern is that some of these productions that are currently still going forward do have a lot of rhetoric in it that just isn't entertainment, that has no entertainment value, has been getting poor ratings, and is out there. You almost kind of want to press the delete button, but you can't. Um, you know, um,
talking of pressing the delete button and stopping things, I was very, very heartened over the past couple of weeks to see that over at Warner Brothers, they've canned a bunch of shit. They really have. I just thought, wow, this Zaslav guy, he's taking this stuff on board, and you can give it all of that before you get into the pilot seat. But this guy's just gone. I remember talking to you about this on perhaps on the show, perhaps on the phone. I can't remember which way around it was, but the Wonder Twins movie with Zan and Jaina, and I remember because I've said it to everybody about everyone else, but well, who asked for that? Who wants that? Nobody, literally nobody wants that movie, and he cancelled it. He's looked at Legends of Tomorrow on the CW, boom, cancelled it. We're not doing with that anymore. Flash is finishing off. Arrow's already done. Supergirl's already, it's kind of like the only thing that's left now is the best one, which is the best thing that CW have done in years and years and years, Superman and Lois, which is an outstanding show. So for WB and their superhero stable, I'm expecting really, really great things. I saw, I think it was Stubble, which was saying earlier on. I saw it pop up in the chat that he thinks that hero fatigue has started to set in for both season. I would be inclined to argue a little bit with that and say I think the best is yet to come from DC. Um, Now, whether that is what I want or whether they go in a completely new direction, I don't know. But as much as I want, hashtag restore the Snyderverse, and of course I do, and I bang on about it incessantly, and I'm sorry, chat, because you know my stance on this. But even if they don't and they just scrap it and start again, I am actually excited off the back of the Batman. What Zaslav just seems to have a vision. He's going to make decisions, and he wants to monetize he wants to monetize Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, and that's all we want. That's all the DC fans want. You've got these amazing characters, and yes, and you've got HBO Max for lesser known characters that you could spin off there. So yeah, I'm excited. What Retro Nerd Girl has a comment on this, actually. Well, there's two comments. Let's say Chip says, we're talking about Netflix. People don't want the finger to be waved, right? I'm so glad Braveheart flopped. So glad that Reacher is a flop. So glad Top Gun is trash. I don't understand uh, that. I'm afraid.
I think he's being
Um,
sarcastic, but,
ah, yeah. Yes. No, I get you. Right. Yes, of course. Yeah. No, I see what you mean, Chip. Sorry, man. I was being slow. Retro Nerd Girl, do you want to take this one?
yeah, Retro Nerd Girl says, "I hope Warner Brothers will tighten up their lineup. Wonder Twins was doomed from the beginning, just my opinion." Yeah.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
cares? Like, literally, Rich Renoga, who, like you're sitting there and you're thinking, let's think of some lesser known DC characters we could have a movie about. I don't know. Constantine, all right, he's pretty famous now, but there's a ton of them. The Atom, whatever, whichever one, Green Arrow, you can make a movie about him. In no conversation anywhere was anybody sitting down on a fan forum like this one or chatting away on a DC forum going, do you know what we need? You know what we need? You know, and here's the other thing: when they did DC Fandom, and oh, yeah, we need Super Pets and Wonder Twins. Like, are you guys? What are you smoking? And if so, who's your dealer? And please introduce me because in no universe is even in no multiverse does anybody want that. So yeah, I'm with you, Retro Nerd Girl. And I confess I am not subscribed to your channel yet. Something I will rectify directly after this stream. I will be thrilled to go check that out.
Definitely, guys, please subscribe to Retro Nerd Girl, her channel. The link is in the chat, so please do that. And Bloodsport One says, "Hey, Art, just purchased my New York City 2022 Comic Con tickets. Yes, I will see you there, Bloodsport One."
Awesome.
Um, and Joker Voice also has a YouTube channel. I just subscribed to it yesterday. Hey, Joker Voice. Hope you're well. It was probably Friday, actually, but I don't remember when I don't remember. But Joker Voice, guys, check out Joker Voice on YouTube, and please go ahead and subscribe to his channel as well, Russ.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I have to say, Joker Voice says, "Happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. Happy Mother's Day, for sure." And I think that, I think it's very interesting to look at, how they're going to go forward because, Russ, I've never seen so many changes so quickly in an organization.
Yeah.
It's almost like he said to, let's say one of his executives and said, "Get me a list of every show. I
Mhm.
wanna know how much they cost, I wanna know how far it's gone, and I wanna know, the audience reaction so far," when they test it on audiences,
Mm.
and if it's not what he thinks is up to par, he's like, "That's it. We're
Yeah.
not moving forward with it," and I would love to be that person.
Yeah. Well, I think I used to love Legends of Tomorrow. It was actually, my favorite CW show for a while.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then they just kind of went off the wall with it, you had this sort of rotating door of characters, and it just became ludicrous. But I appear to be in a minority when it comes to this. 'Cause with Sam, my daughter, we used to watch it all the time. She loved it, but it just got increasingly more mental as it went on. But everyone seemed to love that direction. I just thought it was rubbish. But um, it seems to have just those CW shows have now run their course, and it's the right decision. Just how we've had nine, was it 8 or 9 seasons of the Flash? We had six or seven seasons of Arrow. We had 5 or 6 seasons of Supergirl. Those are good runs. Boom, finish it. That's it. And I think it's a smart move. I just can't wait because they're saying that they're doing something on the 18th. I think it might be like one of those Marvel Investor Days or whatever, the 18th of this month. And the Zacharites like myself in that little sphere of the internet, um, they're all predicting we're going to get the Ayer cut because David Ayer has been posting himself up on Twitter and sort of stealth references to Suicide Squad. So hopefully we'll get something like that, because if that happens, then the Snyderverse fans will go crazy if we get the Ayer cut. I really hope we do get to see that, even if they don't restore the Snyderverse. I still think it would be brilliant uh, to have that film, as we had with the Snyder Cut, seen as the director intended, and HBO Max is the perfect platform for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think we should get the Ayer cut. I think we should get it, whatever they're offering. If fans are enjoying it and we love it, and we'll rewatch it over and over again. It does tell you a lot about what fans want to see,
Mhm.
and why not give them this? It seems to be, it's just bewildering to me how long it took, let's say, the Snyder cut to come out. I mean, I think that they should have just said yes, it's here. But the idea that people have to kind of like constantly ask and ask and ask for stuff, just make it available. We know they're there. We know there are multiple cuts there. We know there's special features that you guys are not releasing. Release it all. We'll buy
Yeah, I
it.
agree, and I think our with that whole debacle over the past decade now, since Man of Steel. And let's take the Snyderiness out of it. Let's just talk about Superman himself. You've got probably the best looking man in the history of anything, the best Superman arguably ever. And I saw Superman the movie in the cinema as a child. Christopher Reeves is my Superman, right? But this guy, Henry Cavill, like, I went in there, bit like Rob uh, says about Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I went in there wanting to hate this film. I think, this isn't, and I came out of that converted. And this actor is at the top of his game, at the top of his popularity, and as constantly, a Cheers Joker voice is constantly saying he wants to do this. He wants this project. He wants to be Superman. And Warner Brothers are like, yeah, no. Like, you've literally got one of the most popular guys in the world, arguably the best Superman ever, telling you he wants to do the job, and they're like, no, we're going to make fucking Wonder Twins. Mm.
I mean,
Uh,
it's such a maybe one of the biggest entertainment mistakes ever. And he's another individual who, once again, the female gaze.
mm.
He just doesn't seem to do anything wrong. He always looks great in every role.
He does. Well, it's
I have to
impossible. He's
say,
so beautiful. He hurts
I,
your eyes, doesn't he, Henry Cavill? He's like, ooh.
and he
Or
is the next topic of our toxic masculinity show, of course. Did Am I back? Am I back?
yeah, I
Good,
think you
sorry.
said Henry is the topic of the next
Yes, Henry is the topic of Lorena and my next toxic male appreciation show. I hope I might have said the wrong thing. I said toxic femininity.
mm,
I meant toxic male appreciation, which is the show that we're doing together. He is gonna be the topic of the next one. And I really liked him in The Witcher. I didn't know he could even make that role come alive. It seemed like it would
mm.
be difficult to do it, and he was badass in that.
Yeah,
You know,
he was great. I just want to pick up on what Retro Nerd Girl is saying here. The Aya cut looks like we lost a lot in theatrical. Well, it was completely reshot, wasn't it? Because Warner Brothers shit the bed basically, and for reasons best known only to themselves. Because I remember when they were talking about it when it first came out, it was almost going to be like a horror movie, if memory serves. And the fact that the director has been so vocal in his, like, this is not my film. He's like Pontius Pilate. Like, I wash my hands of it. It's nothing to do with me. Like, of course he had to come out in the press junkets at the time and say, "Oh yes, it's the greatest thing ever." But now, with all the distance of time that we've got, um, he said it's not my movie, and I've got my movie. It's here. It's in the can. Unlike the Snyder Cut, which they had to spend a fortune finishing, that film's ready to rock and roll. Let's see it. I'm with you, Retro Nerd Girl. I think we've lost,
Absolutely, and
or
I
we lost you there for a second, our
my internet is not, maybe a little wonky. Um, I think Tom was like, I was still here, and my internet is getting a little wonky just now. Are you all right, Mom? I'm fine. Okay. Tom, are you excuse me. Tom, can you let us know, in the chat whether
you're
how long
back.
we were out for?
You're
Russ,
back.
are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
You're back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys, about that. Just my internet is not. But back to what Retro Nerd Girl was saying. Yeah, um, that's something to think about because they have hours and hours of footage that is never used now. And there's no problem with storing it anymore because it's all digital, right, Russ? I mean, there's thousands of hours of stuff for the past 10 years that we haven't seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think in terms of this particular vision, I'd absolutely love to see it. But Chips offers a an alternative view here, saying they
It
nearly
does.
invested $100 million in Justice League, but it did close to shit all for subscribers on HBO Max. Yeah, that apparently is true. Right? I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not going to argue the toss with
I don't
you.
know either. And no, you
But
may be right. I think HBO Max. I'm sorry, I don't think HBO is ever gonna have any problem with either their movies or their streaming network or their channels because they just put out quality work,
mhm, yeah, yeah,
you know?
they do.
And
HBO
so
has been a hallmark of quite, The Sopranos and Broadwalk Empire and all of those things. Back in the day, and of course Game of Thrones when it was good.
yeah, that's true. But thank you, Chips Bewick, for sharing that with us. We do value your opinion. Not everybody
Yeah,
has the same opinion, and we're glad that you shared that. Ashley Chase, hello to you,
hi Ash.
Ashley. Ash Chase. It's so good to see you. Today, Ash. And Mario says Zack Snyder intends to present his true version of Sucker Punch one day. I would love to see this.
Yeah, I actually quite enjoyed the extended cut of that, if not the director's cut of Sucker Punch. It is the most Snydery of Snyder movies. I'll give it that. And I think it was quite a misunderstood film at the time. I've actually got it on Blu-ray. I think I must watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ash asks, and Tom Jr. Jackson, did you guys see MOM and what did you think? What's MO? Should I know what MOM is? I think he
Multiverse of
means Russ.
Madness. Um,
Yes. Oh, I did. I saw it, Ash. And I thought it was okay. It was an okay film, but I think they had made a few mistakes in it that I would have liked to have seen some things different. So if I were giving it a score, I would probably give it maybe a 6 out of 10. So
okay.
yeah. And I'm curious, Russ, when you see it, what your thoughts will be on this film because honestly, I think that it really is, they kind of you'll see what I mean, I think, once you see it in some of the
Mhm.
areas, and, Chips goes on to say, "Hey, I like the Snyder Cut, don't get me wrong."
Yeah, no, I love it obviously, but yeah, I'm not aware of the numbers. I remember seeing a lot of stuff about it on Facebook because I have Facebook because I'm old, and it, these things can never be discussed like we would discuss it here on social media. So there was something about it was it didn't bring in as many subscribers as the Batman or something.
Right,
I think this was it. But the counter argument to that was, well, Snyder Cut brought in this many hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and Batman brought in that many hundreds of thousands of subscribers. But the counter argument to that was from the Snyder Bros was, well, yeah, but you aren't comparing percentages; you're comparing numbers. So if your streaming service of last year or 2 years ago, no, last year had 100,000 subscribers and you suddenly jumped up to 120, that's good. But if you're running a streaming service a year later that's got 200,000 subscribers, then yeah, clearly you're going to have more subscribers brought in by it. This was the sort of argument. So they weren't comparing like with like. Whether that's true or not, though, I don't know. I'm not going to argue with you, Chips, because I haven't actually looked into it as much as perhaps I should.
Yes, and Tom Jr. Jackson is answering Ash Chase's question. He says he saw it and loved it. It was a lot of fun. And Chips Bewick also says Multiverse of Madness was great.
Mhm.
And Tom Jr. Jackson says it opened to 190 million this weekend, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a
I
lot of
think that's
money.
going to be, they're going to probably hit a billion with this film for sure.
Hmm.
And Ash Chase says, it was very fast paced. I did really like it. Some parts were insane. Yes, they were. There were some insane parts in the film. About the last thing that I might want to mention today is that Doctor Who, Russ,
Hmm.
Doctor Who, apparently they've chosen a new doctor and they're going to go forward with this gentleman.
Hmm.
I don't know him at all, but it says that he is in a show called Sex Education.
Hmm.
His name is Nkudu Gatwa, and he's going to be replacing Jodie Whittaker as the new doctor in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So I think that will be very, very interesting, especially since it, Doctor Who is kind of fell into a crevasse, so to speak,
Hmm.
with everything. So, oh dark. Um, and Tom, yes. Oh, thanks, Tom. So for that. Tom, are we disappearing from the video when like at certain
Yeah,
times, or is it just
we
me
lost
who's
you there
seeing
for a little
some?
bit.
Yeah.
We lost you there.
So I'm sorry about
You
that.
I think you were saying that they've picked a new guy to be Doctor Who, and I think the question was, how do you think it's going to
Yes. Yes.
land? Um,
And
it's
yeah, and he's in a show called Sex Education that Russ is saying is on Netflix.
Netflix. Yeah.
And yeah, I've never watched that show, but he's gonna be replacing it, and I wasn't sure if anybody on here um knows anything about him, but he's certainly very different from Jodie Whittaker, who was just cast wrong for that role. I think they should have picked somebody like I don't know. I don't know who they should have picked, but it was a mistake for sure. Oh, okay. So
I, ca-
Tom was saying that
I,
I'm
yeah, you're freezing. Yeah, I'm not
sorry.
so sure. I'm not so sure it was a mistake to cast her. Uh, I think it's more of a mistake. And here we go again. You know, to use Doctor Who as a platform for your political agenda, right? So yeah, brilliant. Cast a woman. Let's explore that angle, right? That's fine. But no, it's the BBC. So no, they had to go down that road. They had to denigrate um, that they have the white guy in the show, who's a brilliant actor, and he does a game show here called The Chase. But he's a brilliant actor as well, Bradley Walsh, and every opportunity to denigrate, that guy and make him out to be the bumbling klutz in the butt of every joke. And now they've gone ahead with some diverse casting, which is so predictable. It's just so predictable. You saw it coming a mile away. And whether the guy's a good actor or not, great. Good luck to him. But I worry for Whovians, which I am not a Whovian at all. But when you have seen your beloved show become a platform, and Chibnall has, I think he's come out and said this, that it's a platform for their social justice causes. You then get the savior guy come back, Russell T Davis, good name for a writer, that um come back, and they, the I didn't see from the Whovians, uh, outcries of joy that he was coming back, because of the fear that no matter how good his ideas and concepts were going to be, the BBC, being what it is, would not allow him to do that. And for me, casting this guy is literally saying business as usual. We are going to
Mm.
continue to put forward our agenda. We're going to denigrate the previous doctors. We're not going to overwrite the timeless children. Everything is going to be as it is. And this was their chance. It's a bit like your Star Wars. They had literally won everybody back with Luke Skywalker coming in and then lost all those people the following week by firing Gina. And seems like exactly the same thing, that you've got this chance. You've got Russell T Davies back. Let him do what he does. Oh, but no. I saw the news and I felt for the Hoovians. I'm just thinking, if I was a Hoovian, I'd be like, oh. Now we could be completely wrong, and he could be giving his head, and it could be the best show ever. And please God for the Doctor Who fans that it is, but it just reeks of BBC meddling already.
It's really a shame. Russell T Davies is like one of I guess, really the world's one of the world's best writers.
Yeah,
Uh, as far as I know, you're lucky. You're very lucky to have any association with him at all in a production. To hear that, usually stuff by him is extremely successful. So let's just see what happens with this. And we have Darren Hoyt. Hi, Darren,
hey mate.
saying, "Hi, Russ and good stream. Well, thank you. Do you ever watch the channel Open by Chance? They have a huge collection of all types of action figures. I have not seen it, but I want to check it out, Darren. And thank you for letting us know." And Retro Nerd Girl says, I'm assuming this is Justice. What is
Yeah, Zack Snyder's Justice League.
okay?
Yeah.
They told all their new subs that they weren't continuing the Snyderverse and not realizing the air cut, and they unsubbed. It was their own fault. Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
thought of that. I never thought of it like that. But actually, if you follow the chain of events that happen, because the Snyder Cut comes out, we're all celebrating. Fucking champagne corks are popping all over Russ's house and sitting down watching it over and over again. And then literally, like almost the following day, oh, so you've brought back the Snyder Cut. How are you thrilled? And Sarnoff turns around and goes, "No, we're not releasing the Ayer cut." And no, Zach's finished his Snyder. Zach's finished his trilogy, which it was never. It was supposed to be a quintology, and Sarnoff shit all over that. And you know what? You make a great point, Nerd Retro Girl. I can't wait to subscribe to your channel. I'm just not familiar with your work at all, and you are speaking of my language. I can't wait to get stuck in.
Absolutely, guys. Definitely subscribe to Retro Nerd Girl. And Bloodsport One says, a couple of years ago, Netflix was killing it. Luke Cage, Stranger Things.
Hmm.
Now what happens? Honestly, I think it's this message that they tried to interject into everything. That's what happened, because they
Yeah,
lost their way away from storytelling towards something that has nothing to do with entertainment.
and perhaps so you make a good point with Stranger Things. There's They did this with Battlestar Galactica. I think Battlestar Galactica is like the gold standard of this, and I think perhaps The Expanse as well. You have a story to tell, and you end that story. Now, Stranger Things was great, series one, series two, but when you've got a show with children in it that's about a child's perspective, and really all this weird stuff is going on around them, but it's also about how they're growing up, you know. But now they're sort of like they're all adults, and it's not that. So you need to stop these things. So that it's also almost like a victim of its own success, because who's excited for the next season of Stranger Things? But I haven't heard any buzz about it. It's not like Cobra Kai, where we're excited for the new one. We should, because their cast is growing up, but the show allows for them to grow up in its sort of soap opera style. But yeah, maybe it's that. But yeah, I do think the agenda is coming to hamper Netflix. Certainly, it's hampering Rings of Power, as we know. So yeah, you make a good point there, both of you.
Yeah. And there's a reason why in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that when the children grow up, they can't use the portals anymore. So, I think that the
Mm.
writer clearly, C.S. Lewis clearly knew that it wasn't going to appeal outside of a certain, demographic. Rogue Thinker says, I'm optimistic about the Doctor. If they basically erase the Jodie era and give us good stories, I hope this Doctor would be good. I think we're
Look,
all hoping that
look,
for sure.
there's a huge word in there. If if they do the right thing, and my point about this young actor, and I suspect he's brilliant. He's probably classically trained. It's nothing against that guy personally. It's just their casting choice instantly made me go, nothing's going to change. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, and Darren, we know Az and Muller are streaming and that they're not happy with that. And I know they're also not happy with they're not happy with Doctor Strange, and they're not happy with Doctor Who. So as you mentioned, Russ, it is hard to watch people who are just such huge fans of it be so disappointed.
Isn't
Chip
Gary Ned Wright is a huge Whovian, isn't he? I think it's his favorite, or is it He's Lord of the Rings and Doctor Who with him. He's
Lord of
like
the
a
Rings is his favorite,
student of
but he
both. Yeah.
does love Doctor Who. There is no doubt about that. You are right, Russ. Chips goes on to say, but when they announced the Snyder Cut and released it, people signed up, but not enough stuck around for long. It made national news because they were the first company to do such a thing, and maybe they were the first company
But
to
but
listen.
this is what Retro Girl was saying. They literally brought that out, and then all these people subscribed to it, expecting that this was the new dawn, and then they just nipped it in the bud. So people were like, "Well, not interested. I don't want to watch a bunch of Batman shows with no Batman in it or whatever," and they, you know, lost those subscribers because that's what people were subscribing for, right?
Absolutely. And guys, Russ, where can people find you as we bring this broadcast to a close?
Well, I'm on Facebook if you want to look me up on there. I think it's /Russell_Whitfield or something like that. Or I have a really out of date website called russellwhitfield.com where you can email me. But more to the point, RM, where can we find you?
Oh, well, of course, you can find me here on Positive Fandom, my YouTube channel. Oops, sorry. Sorry, I didn't know my phone was gonna ring and then my computer would ring too.
Mhm.
You can find me here on Positive Fandom, my YouTube channel, where we have this show, Sunday Brunch on Sunday mornings at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here with Russ, live every Sunday morning, so you can find me here. I also, do live streams, as well, and recorded, videos on all the different great things in fandom. But you can also find me on Monday nights on Toxic Femininity with Lorena Creole at 8 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes on Wednesdays and Thursdays, you can find me on the 1/6 Scale Man Network with Lael Rockwell. But Lorena and I also have another series called Toxic Male Appreciation. Um, and Toxic Male Appreciation, we usually stream that on Twitch on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, and then we rebroadcast it sometime during the week on YouTube. On Fridays, you can find me during the daytime on Midnight's Edge in the morning with Tom and Andre and Shadow, who's now joining us on Fridays. And on Friday nights or Saturday nights, sometimes you can find me on the PGS with Robert Meyer Burnett, streaming
And
on Midnight Musings, guys. And
and
also my
tonight,
Yes, thank you. Usually at 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time or 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Um, and you can find my PGS All Stars and PGS review shows on there as well. So, guys, please do check it out. Subscribe to this channel, Positive Fandom. Thanks so much for stopping by, Russ. Thank you, as always, for joining me for this show.
thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. And thank you, Tom Jr. Jackson. We are all goof people, Tom. We are all goof people. Thank you so much for being a wonderful collaborator and helping us out as a moderator as well. Everybody, have a great week. Um, and for all of you out there watching, wherever you are in the galaxy, please do remember to always be kind. Take care, everyone.
Cheers, guys.